In light of the recent government shutdown, here's a picture of Texas's Senator Ted Cruz reciting Green Eggs and Ham, which was a part of a 21-hour marathon filibuster against the healthcare law. Similar instances were observed in the case which we have for you today, wherein a small faction of individuals begin to wreak havoc in an organization, which in this case was the US government. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to one and all present here. I'm Craig Lobo, and I'm here today with my co-presenter, Craig Thomas, to talk to you about the case of Cobra versus Commerzbank for corporate governance. Before we delve into the details of this case, I'd like to brief you a little bit about the approach which we have adopted in presenting. We've essentially utilized a timeline of events arranged in chronological order, such that there will be specific intervals on this timeline where we will have decision moments at which we hope to engage a class discussion and request your contribution. So please do participate. The case begins in 1991 when Martin Kohlhausen joins Commerzbank. Commerzbank at the time was the fourth largest bank in Germany with a customer base spanning across 40% of all the local businesses in the country. He brought with him a degree in law as well as an apprenticeship from Deutsche Bank. Now the 1990s were a period of rapid consolidation for the banking sector in Germany, as well as the entire continent of Europe. Reforms were a lot, and we essentially saw the introduction of the euro in addition to technological advancements and globalization on the continent. The banking sector in Europe was essentially fragmented and characterized by small banks which were used to operating in low competitive environments. However, this was changing when a Pricewaterhouse report stated that it was essential for these banks to avail of economies of scale and scope in terms of the product services that they offered as well as their sheer size. And this essentially drove a wave of consolidation for the nations of Europe, wherein banks in their regions began to form alliances, partnerships, and mergers in order to form larger institutions to be competitive on the continental level, as well as against global giants such as Morgan Stanley and Citigroup. Now moving on, at the turn of the millennium, one Hans-Georg Hoffmann, who led Cobra, which was an investment group from Germany, purchased a 17% stake in Commerzbank. He also was able to rally the support of several existing investors of Commerzbank with one simple intention: to sell Commerzbank to a larger institution. Now this was a very disruptive objective, and he was met with much opposition from existing investors who had not just money, but sweat, blood, and tears invested in Commerzbank. Kohlhausen was leading this chase, and now Kohlhausen is a long-serving CEO at Commerzbank. Just before the annual general meeting, midway through the year, Hoffmann estimates that Commerzbank's value is now at 50 euros, when actually it's nestling at about 39 euros. Using their aggressive outlook and their newly acquired stake in the company, they're able to wreak havoc at this AGM. In opposition to this, Kohlhausen threatens Hoffmann by saying that he would disclose some of his history of tax fraud, which was very, very prevalent but not known in the press at the time.
Now this brings us to a very interesting moment in the case. And maybe you read, maybe you didn't, maybe you got lost in all the weird German names. But I want to ask you this. You've got this small faction of owners who are buying up parts of the company with the intention of selling it. And to do this, they're disrupting the AGM and disrupting the company as a whole. Can Cobra do this? I mean, should they be doing this? What do you guys think? Who thinks that what Cobra's doing, buying up this company, is perfectly fine, they should do it? Okay. Why do you think that?
First of all, I don't believe it's disruption. I believe an investment bank, they come in to multiply their interest or their gain. And you have to create value in what you buy to be able to sell to somebody for more.
You don't think they're coming in, raiding this company? I mean, they're going to destroy the company.
Disruption looks as if it's a relative term between both of us.
And who's to say that, I mean, the company's going to be destroyed, but who's to say it's not best for the market? Right? We've seen all these banks growing, so maybe it is. Does anybody disagree with Lloyd? Honest?
I disagree. I think the investment bank has their own maximization goal of returns. There are other stakeholders like employees, and that can be badly impacted by that
so what you're saying is, yeah, I mean, they own part of the company, they can do what they want, but they're gonna hurt employees. Maybe there's other stockholders who are being hurt. There's other people in this equation who might be caught in the crossfire. All right, well, I think you guys both have good points, so let's see how it pans out.
Now, as the year advances, amid reports of a management investor breakdown at Commerzbank, Cole Haasen is determined to rectify the situation because the stock price has begun to dwindle. He does so by initiating merger talks with another German bank, which is named Dresden. Dresdner was controlled predominantly by the superior and highly reputed Allianz Insurance Group in Germany. Obviously, Hoffman and the other investors who supported Cobra were opposed to this move, and they began to try and veto the sale. However, they weren't successful when German regulatory authorities began to block their voting rights. Now, one might think that with Cobra out of the way, Cole Haasen's path to secure this merger would be relatively simple. However, things weren't in favor of him, and it just wasn't to be, because they weren't able to negotiate a merger ratio. Commerzbank was not willing to settle for anything other than a 45-55 split, whereas Dresdner was not willing to go below a 60-40 split. Moreover, mergers such as these were very difficult in Germany at the time, owing to the complicated nature of the institutionalized systems of banking. So eventually, merger talks fell apart. But this did not deter Cole Haasen, who was determined to insulate Commerzbank against the threat of investors such as Cobra in the future. He now tries to initiate talks to sell 40% stake of the company to two of Commerzbank's allies in the banking industry in the form of Generali of Italy and SBCH of Spain in the form of 20% packages each.
So again, let's look at what's happening here. You've got this dangerous Cobra faction, right? This small group of owners. And you've got the manager, Cole Haasen. And what does he try to do? Cole Haasen basically issues stock, tries to sell off some of the company to other people so that he can keep control and limit the influence of Cobra. Now again, is this a good idea? Should he be doing this? I mean, can he do this? Is the CEO, limiting this dangerous faction, or is he putting a stranglehold on the company and bringing in some of his friends to make sure that he keeps control and can run the company he wants to? What do you guys think? Who thinks that this idea of selling off stock to some of his friends is a good idea to limit Cobra's influence? Yeah, why do you think that?
Well, I mean, if his goal is to limit influence, I think he's doing so. I'm not sure he's taking into account the overall company goal, but if you're asking if he's trying to limit the influence of Cobra, absolutely.
Okay. So it's effective.
Yeah.
Or it might be effective, we're gonna see. But I'm asking, is it, and you said yourself, it's maybe not in the best company goals. Why is it not what's best for the company?
Well, I mean, again, it's kind of like what Cobra's doing. Instead of the broad range of investors, they have a very specific group having essentially too much power over a company that might not have the same interests as the company.
Okay. So maybe he's protecting the interests of the other owners.
Yeah.
Is that what you're,
Yeah.
So don't let me put words in your mouth.
No, that's
okay.
yeah.
Okay, and I think that's a good point. But you have to remember that buying stock isn't always the best idea. We learned this back in finance class. It can signal to investors that you're in trouble. It lowers the stock price sometimes. And some of the other investors, those people who you're talking about, the other owners, are worried because it's diluting everybody's share, not just Cobra's share. It's diluting everybody's share. Anyway, Cole Haasen's going to try it. He's going to sell some stock. Let's see how it works.
Quite contrary to Cole Haasen's expectations, Commerzbank is only successful in selling off 10% of the company to the Italian Generali, while talks with SBCH of Spain eventually bore no fruit. However, another Italian bank, Mediobanca Italiana, almost doubled the stake from 1.2 to 2%. But actually, this still leaves Cole Haasen with a total of 12%, nowhere close to his initial proposal of 40%. Now, the media and investors, along with analysts who are observing this thing unfold, are essentially growing increasingly skeptical of the happenings at Commerzbank. they essentially take a very conservative prediction and state that Commerzbank share would now dip to as low as a dismal 30 euros because of the failed merger with Dresdner, as well as an inability to purchase, sell off the shares to Italian SBCH and Generali. Anyway, it's now May of 2001, and Kohlhausen is preparing for his final AGM as the CEO of Commerzbank. The environment and atmosphere is nerve-wracking. Just before the AGM kicks off, Hoffman, who's leading Cobra's chase, sells off a majority of their stake in Commerzbank to the extent that they now just have 9.98%. This allows them to get their voting rights reinstated by the German regulatory authorities. As the meeting unfolds, the 40 private investors that sided with Cobra throughout the last year began to raise havoc once again at the AGM. They first requested a vote of no confidence against management and then demanded a special audit of the capital increase. Hoffman accused Kohlhausen of not acting in the best interests of a significant portion of the shareholders, whereas Kohlhausen began to accuse Hoffman of not clearly stating Cobra's plans for Commerzbank up front. But as the meeting advanced, things simmered down, and Cobra eventually gave into a stand, and they withdrew all the additional items from the agenda. And the meeting ended peacefully with Kohlhausen being elected to the supervisory board with the 99.9% vote in favor, and Klaus-Peter Mueller takes his place at the helm of Commerzbank.
So one thing that I asked myself throughout this whole case, and maybe you guys did too, is where's the board in all of this? And where should they be? I mean, should the board be protecting the rights of the owners? I mean, that's their job, right? Or should they be working with the CEO, Kohlhausen, to save the company? What do you guys think? Who thinks that? Oh, yeah.
I think they should try to work in favor of the owners of the company, and that's why they have been elected at the first place.
Okay, so you're saying that the board should work with the owners, okay, because that's their job. Okay. What if they really believe that that's not what's best for the company? What if they think, Cobra's dangerous, they're terrible, they're going to destroy all this hard work in their bank?
I just like to say, it is not always the board's responsibility to take care of the existing shareholders' interests, because there are potential investors who will invest looking into the present performance of the company, so that we have independent directors in the board. So they are also supposed to look after the interests of the potential investors, so that they're not misleading buying their shares.
So you're saying that the board shouldn't just protect the interests of the current owners, they should also protect the interests of potential future owners. Okay, I hadn't thought of that, so that's interesting. Now the reason I bring this up is because this potential takeover would happen once again. In 2003, the company's doing really well, the stock price is way up, it's up to 280, mainly because of strong performance by the bank, but also because of talks of another merger. Now once again, this attracts the attention of Cobra. They work with WCM to buy up shares with the intention of selling off the bank. However, this again fails, and both WCM and Cobra have to scale back quite significantly. Meanwhile, Commerzbank is up and running to this day. So as we close this case, I want you to think about some of these issues in relation to two of the big topics that we've learned about in class so far. And one is the principal agent theory. Now hopefully we all know what this is by now, hopefully. But I want to ask you, what are the responsibilities of a manager when he or she truly believes that what the owners want to do is not in the best interests of the company? And I also want to talk to you about the contingency theory. Now this is a theory that states there's no one right way to run a business. You have to look at the context, look at different ideas, and be flexible, make a decision in the moment. And with that in mind, is this a case, or is there any case, in which the board should side against the owners to do what's best for the company? And with that, we thank you very much for your time, and we're open for questions.
Okay, I'll kick it off.
Okay.
since, you know, you can't have dead silence for the next 3 minutes. So, what is the responsibility of agents that go out and try to maximize shareholder value? So Carlike, Atkinson, I mean, there's just a number of people in the marketplace today that buy significant positions. Some work out, some don't, but obviously the one in Pennies didn't work out. Sears Kmart hasn't worked out so well for that hedge fund manager. Carlike is kind of on the opposite side of that, it's been pretty successful. So why shouldn't there be somebody to push management to a better level of performance when you identify their inefficiencies and their intransience?
Well, actually, in this case, there wasn't really much talk of there actually being an inefficiency. I mean, Cobra was doing fairly, Commerzbank was doing fairly well at the start. These investors essentially come in, and within a period of 6 months, they have this, whole goal of selling at premium of 30% and per share. I mean, there was no evidence that Commerzbank wasn't really performing as well. If they weren't, then that made sense for them to sell the company.
Yeah, but if I can push management, doesn't that incentivize the others 90% of the shareholders? I mean,
Yeah.
If I can get their price to 50, haven't I mean, this is Carl Icahn's position, always get about 9% and push the value price, and everybody does well when you do that. So, I mean, I don't understand why that doesn't benefit the current shareholders of the organization. And I guess I do. I mean, I appreciate the definition of investors in the future. I just don't know who they are. And unfortunately, under at least American common law and Chancery Court rules, fiduciary obligation is on those that you represent today, not who you might represent in the future. So, other judgments might be confusing that. But I'm trying to figure out why, everybody doesn't benefit.
Well, I mean, there was also, you're right in saying that, it's good to incentivize them to perform better, but the thing was, there was also a larger proportion, in fact, the majority of Commerzbank, which did not want this to actually happen. They were not in favor of them selling off the company. Some new guys just come in 6 months and decide to, sell off the company. So that was one of the reasons. Okay, if they had a greater support from, the shareholders, then that made sense for them to do that. Definitely, they did incentivize Commerzbank to do better, and they did perform better eventually.
Questions?
You are tougher, so I'll do this one.
Okay. Your question was about the board responsibility to either support the CEO in saving the company, or they should act in favor of the shareholder. Well, my point is saving the company is ultimately that will be to the benefit of the shareholder of the company, isn't that?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the opposite point that Larry's making, is what really benefits the shareholder the most. Now, they're going to get this big payoff, right? Supposedly, maybe 50 euros a share. Kohlhausen is assuming, or at least presenting the case that, well, you can maximize your value if we keep the company going